Hey guys, what I have for you here today is not going to be the most exciting thing in the world, but one of the things that you have to be able to excel at and to master is writing essays. Today we're going to be focusing on the LEQ, which is the long essay question. Now everyone's written one of these types of essays at some point in time. Some of the specific things that you have to do may be a little bit different, but I know everyone has written an argumentative essay. So this is an essay where you pose an argument and then you provide evidence and analysis of that evidence to prove your thesis, which is your claim or your argument. So in a nutshell, that's really all the LEQ actually is. It's just an argumentative essay. The College Board, though, has certain things that you need to accomplish in order to gain points, which then will determine what your score is overall on the LEQ. So you kind of have to look at this as a checklist. These are non-negotiable. You have to do all of these things. There are a total of 6 points that are available on the LEQ essay. It's only 15% of the overall score for the AP test. So in my eyes, the LEQ is probably not the most important thing that we're going to be doing, but I think it's an easy thing because you've written these types of essays before. You just have to do all of these checklisty type things that the College Board is asking you to do. And some of them are quite complex, but we'll be practicing these things all semester. So hopefully by the time that you do this in May, that you'll have a really good understanding of what all these things are. So let's look at the rubric first, and then we'll get into some specifics. So this rubric I am taking from Tom Ritchie, and he has a great website, tomritchie.net, where you can get a lot of information. He has informative videos on content and skills, and then he also has these what I think are really easy, good rubrics to get you guys to really comprehend and understand what it is that you need to do on these types of essays. All right, so let's get into it and look at these main things. So I'm just going to go over these in general and then show you how to do these in the essay. So contextualization is the first thing that everyone's going to do in their essay. You need 3 to 4 sentences of contextualization, which is describing a broader historical context relevant to the prompt. So this is setting the stage. This is that scrolling thing that you see at the beginning of Star Wars. If you read fairy tales, once upon a time, blah, 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 blah. So you're setting that context. You're talking about broader historical events that are relevant to the overall topic. So it's 3 to 4 sentences. It's the first thing you do in your introductory paragraph. After your contextualization, in your introductory paragraph is your thesis. This is your claim, also your argument. So this is what you're going to be providing evidence for throughout the entire essay. It has to be historically defensible, so you can't make something up. And it has to make sense. Okay, so it's got to be historically defensible with a clear line of reasoning. So you have to use logic, and you have to be specific when you are constructing your argument or your thesis. And then very importantly, and by the way, these are each 1 point. And then coming down here, you have your evidence and support, which I think is probably the most important thing that you need to do in your essay. That with the analysis and reasoning, and that's half of the value of the essay itself. So you have your argument. In order to prove your argument, you have to have specific evidence. And it has to be relevant evidence. And then that evidence is there to support whatever your argument is. And you have to explain that. You know, you just can't say that here's my example and it just proves what I'm trying to say. You actually have to state why that is. So these are 2 points. So you have to provide specific examples of evidence relevant. Okay, you just can't pull these things out of the air. It has to be relevant to the topic. And then you have to do the how, the what, not the what, but the how and the significance. So you have to support your argument with your evidence, but you have to explain how your evidence actually proves whatever your argument happens to be. So that's your support, and it has to be specific and relevant. And then you have your analysis and reasoning. the first point in that is going to be dealing with how well you actually are going to use the historical skill that was given to you, or the HTS. That's historical thinking skill. So you have 3 different historical thinking skills that you could be asked to write an essay on. So you have your comparison, compare and contrast, causation, cause and effect, and then CCOT, which is change in continuity over time. So an essay won't address all 3 of these things, but you'll have an essay addressing one of these. To get the point, you have to adequately do the comparison. You have to adequately show the causation. You have to adequately show change in continuity over time. So how well you actually do that throughout the entire essay can't be just like one little statement or something. It's through the whole thing. How well you do that, that will give you the point, or not get you the point, for analysis and reasoning, point number 1. For point number 2, you have what's called the complex understanding, which a lot of us APUSH teachers call the unicorn point, because it's basically almost impossible to get. It's very complex. There are many things that they're saying that you can do to get the point. It's not just one thing though. It's several things, and it's kind of looking at your essay more of in a holistic way. So it's not looking at anything specific, like one little sentence, or one of the ways in here says you can get the complex understanding point is if an essay is asking for the causes of something, that you also illustrate effects. But if you only show one effect of causation, that's not going to get you the complex understanding point, because you have to show complex understanding throughout the entire paper, which is extremely hard to do, especially in the time frame that you're given to write these things. So we really are going to be focusing on contextualization, thesis, the examples, support, and getting you guys to do a good job with the historical thinking skill given. You don't need to get 6 points on this essay in order to have a chance of getting a 4 or a 5 on the AP test overall. So you just need to do well. You need to get, like, if you want a 5 on the AP test, on the LEQ, if you get a 3, you have the ability still to get a 4 or a 5, as long as you do well on the other things. So I think the easiest things to do with the rubric is contextualization, thesis, and specific examples. That in itself, those 3 things, that's 3 points if you do that well. And if you don't do anything else well, then, and you do okay on the other things on the AP test, then you're going to do fine. Now I'm going to push you to do well on all of these things, but just understand that in the long run, that, you know, to me, it's kind of like playing the game. Like, what do I absolutely have to do to do well? So you don't need to get every single point in order to do well in this class or on the AP test. So let's look at a prompt and then go through all the parts. And I know this is not the most exciting thing in the world, but like I said, this is really important. If you gain understanding of what I'm talking about here, you're going to be able to rock out the DBQ as well, because a DBQ is basically the same thing. It has all the same stuff, except that you will be asked to analyze documents and use documents as part of your evidence. So if you understand this, you'll understand the DBQ and vice versa. So let's look at a prompt. This is a topic that we're currently looking at. So the prompts right here says, in what ways did ideas and values held by Puritans influence the political, economic, and social development of New England colonies from 1620 to the 1690s? And then they will give you which historical thinking skill that the essay is going to be evaluating. So for this one, this is causation. So I'm breaking it down here, and I'm saying basically what this is asking is this. How did Puritan ideas and values affect? Okay, so that's the causation part. So causation includes both cause and effect. So let me read that again. How did Puritan ideas and values affect the development of New England politically, socially, and economically? So that is what you are going to be writing the essay on. This is the topic, the prompt. Okay, I'm going to get into that in a minute. But the first thing that you need to do is you need to determine, well, what the heck are Puritan ideas and values? You kind of have to know what that is to be able to do anything else in this. So I broke it down a little bit right here, and I broke it down into political ideas and values of Puritans, social ideas and values of Puritans, and economic ideas and values of Puritans. So looking at the political. So political ideas and values of Puritans is they believed in self-government. They also are going to believe in representative government as well. And largely we're talking about representative government like with church members. But still, they do have this basic idea of representative government. So I just picked a couple things: politically, self-government, representative government. Now, what are the effects of these beliefs, these values and ideas on the development of the New England colonies? So we have some specific effects of this. You have the Mayflower Compact, which was pretty much how Plymouth was governed. You have Massachusetts Bay Company, and they were more theocratic in nature, but they also had town hall meetings, which is a form of representative government. It's limited, but it's still representative government. And another effect of self-government and representative government within New England and how it developed, it is going to provide stability of the colony as a whole. Now, socially speaking, what were some ideas and values of the Puritans? So they believed in compulsory church membership. Again, for the select few, the visible saints, everyone should go to church. It's probably more of what I was thinking of. But compulsory church membership, live life according to the Bible, focus on family, cultural superiority, and importance of education. So these are all ideas and values of Puritans in terms of social things. So what were the effects of these things on the development of New England? So because of things like compulsory church membership, living life according to the Bible, you have an effect being strict societal norms. You also are going to have the church losing membership. And there will be a couple of things that happened, like the Jeremiad and the Halfway Covenant, that are going to try to address that. I think a big effect of the way the Puritans tried to run their colonies politically and socially is intolerance. That when you have people who believe different things, that becomes problematic, and you have people who are actually banned from the colonies because they believe different things. You're going to have the Salem witch trials, which are an effect of these ideas and values. A positive thing, actually, that comes out of this was mandatory schooling. You've got an increase in education, and that was a huge development within the New England colonies. They had the very first colleges. Now, they were designed more towards creating more ministers and stuff, but each town, if it was over, I think it was over 50 citizens or so, had to have at least an elementary school. So that's a positive thing. Because of their views of cultural superiority, the effect of that is decimation of Indians. You can also say because of their cultural superiority, that's what led to a lot of the intolerance as well. Okay, so those are some social ideas and values and the effects on that. And then economically speaking, the Puritan work ethic, I think, is something that is one of the most important beliefs that they had and values that the Puritans had, which had major effects on the development of New England. So some of the effects would be the establishment of capitalism as an economic system within the region and economic diversity. It wasn't any one thing that people could do. It was, if you worked hard in any of the different industries that were going on in New England, that was a good thing. When you're out there, you're working, be it as a shipbuilder, as in the lumber industry, as a farmer. All these things ultimately are going to, I think, be a big benefit to the development of New England overall. Okay, so I broke it down. So I'm looking at what are the Puritans' ideas and values, politically, socially, and economically, and then how they affected the development of New England. So the first thing that you need to do on your essay, going to the rubric, is contextualization, describing a broader historical context relevant to the prompt. The response must relate to the topic of the prompt, to broader historical events, developments, or processes that occur before, during, or continue after the time frame of the question. This point is not awarded for merely a phrase or a reference. So what that means is your contextualization has to be more than a sentence. And it has to be relevant to the topic. Because we're talking about Puritans, if I was talking about the development of Jamestown, how the English came and indentured servants, that's not relevant to the topic. So I have to focus on what the topic is of the essay, which is Puritans, their ideas and values, politically, socially, and economically, to the development of New England. So every essay starts off with 3 to 4 sentences, and I have that right here, 3 to 4 sentences of contextualization. That is a non-negotiable. You have to do that. Again, that's 1 point on the rubric, and I think it's an easy thing to do. So contextualization. One way you can visually look at this is by having 2 circles. So the center circle is actually going to be the topic. What are you supposed to be doing? What is the topic of the prompt? So the topic of this prompt would be Puritans, political, social, economic development of New England. And again, their ideas and their values. So what are things that are not directly about the development of New England that maybe set everything in motion? So looking at like what happened before that led the Puritans to actually come to the Americas, which then sets them on the path to develop New England in the way that they did. So I'm not going to be talking about what's going on in New England when they're there and setting up their colonies. I want to look at everything surrounding that. Okay, so the outside of the circle, these are things that surround it. So all these things here, they have to be relevant and they have to be related to the topic. Okay, relevant, related to the topic. Again, I wouldn't be talking here about Jamestown. I wouldn't be talking about Virginia, houses of Burgesses, or anything like that, or like the middle colonies. I'd be talking about specifically the Puritans, their political things surrounding their development of New England without directly going into that. So what surrounds this idea? So what are some things about the Puritans that can help set the context for the rest of the essay? So here are some things that are relevant. That the Puritans left England due to persecution. They established the Massachusetts Bay Colony and Plymouth Colony. Their whole belief system really came as a result of the Protestant Reformation and the creation of Calvinism. What else? Okay, so in England, this says commercially depressed woolen districts, so the unclosure movement. That was something that is going to affect them, that is going to bring them to the Americas. You have the Anglican Church established as the Church of England. And remember, for the Puritans, that's what kind of sets everything in motion, because they didn't think the Anglican Church actually is going to be reformed enough. So these things right here, these are the things that I want to talk about in contextualization. I don't want to talk about the development of New England politically, socially, and economically. I want to talk about these things surrounding that. So that's what contextualization is. So I wrote an initial paragraph that is going to be dealing with contextualization. So I'm going to zoom up a little bit on that. Sorry about my webcam. It's cheap. And I tried to do some focusing of this, but there's no focus on it because it's that cheap. So just bear with me here. Okay. All right. Let me read this contextualization to you. So again, 3 to 4 sentences, and it has to be not about what's in the center of the circle, but what's going to be surrounding the circle. Okay. Contextualization. With the Protestant Reformation creating the Anglican Church as the established Church of England, many Protestants, such as the Puritans, demanded further reform. Beginning in the late 16th century, in areas where Puritanism had a hold, land was being closed off, causing many small farmers many of them Puritan, to become economically distressed with no to little means of recourse. With continued persecution due to their outspoken nature against the church, Puritans sought out colonies in New England such as Plymouth and the Massachusetts Bay Colony, where they could take their ideas and values and flourish. All right, so I basically then just took all of these things that were surrounding the main topic and just kind of rearranged them like a puzzle and put them into a contextualization paragraph. Okay, that is contextualization. That is one point, and that's something that you have to do. Every essay you write in here will start off with 3 to 4 sentences of contextualization. All right, what's next? The thesis. The thesis, I think, is overall the most important piece of the essay, because you're writing an argumentative essay. And if you don't have a good argument, then your entire essay is going to suck. So you have to have a good argument. So thesis basically is your argument that will run through the entire paper, and that's a key point, through the entire paper. If it doesn't run through the entire paper, then you're going to have zero chance of getting mostly these two right here, the analysis and reasoning points. Okay, so you have to make sure that that thesis is going to go through the entire paper. It must be historically accurate and must answer all parts of the prompt. Okay, you can't pick and choose. If it's asking you to do political, social, economic, you have to do all 3 of those. You can't just say, well, I'm just going to do political and economic. If you just do something like that, you will not get the point for the thesis, and then you're kind of screwed for the rest of the essay. So your thesis, it can be in your intro paragraph, which I recommend, or your conclusion. I know sometimes you may not have an idea of where you're going with your essay, and that really only becomes apparent once you get to the end. So if that's the case, then you write your thesis in your conclusion. But it's always a good thing to know where you're going beforehand, because your thesis is your roadmap for your essay. It tells you what your argument is and the main points that you're going to be arguing. So it's kind of hard to have a good essay and have the intro and the conclusion, but I've seen it done. So don't think that it can't be done, but my recommendation is that your thesis to be located as your last sentence or sentences. Thesis statements can be more than one sentence of your intro. And then, of course, one very important thing is do not simply rephrase, reword the prompt as your thesis, and I'll give you an example of that momentarily. Okay, one of the things I want to say about the point for the thesis. So if I'm reading your essay and I can't find your thesis in your intro, like I have no idea what you're arguing, then I'm immediately going to go to your conclusion. So if it's not in the intro, my first thing is to go to the conclusion, because the reader needs to know what your argument is, because your argument is going to tell me what type of evidence that you're going to have to support that argument. So I need to know what that is. So that's why I think it's the best thing to put it in the introductory paragraph. Do not put it as your first sentence, though. Okay, it can be done, but you're not going to get marked off for it if it's done okay. But you want the reader to come away with really knowing what your argument is when they're done reading your introductory paragraph. Some people will put their thesis as the very first sentence, and then by the time you get to the end of the paragraph, you're like, what the heck was this kid saying? So then the reader has to go back and reread. Now, me as a teacher, I will go back and reread. However, the AP readers, they spend an average for the LEQ probably about 2 to 3 minutes reading your paper. So it has to be like apparent. Okay, you can't guarantee that the reader is going to go back several times to figure out what you're saying. So if you have that thesis as the last sentence of your intro, the reader comes away with a really clear understanding of what the heck you're going to be arguing for the entire paper. So that's my recommendation to you. All right, let's go back to the prompt. So the prompt asks, in what ways did ideas and values held by Puritans influence the political, economic, and social development of the New England colonies, 1620 to the 1660s? All right, so let's break it down. what do we need to do with this particular prompt? Okay. That's nice and blurry for you. All right, break it down. So you need to make sure within your thesis that you address the historical thinking skill, and I probably should have put that up front, but you have to do that. So this is causation. It's asking basically for the effects of something, so you're going to have to include that within your thesis statement. So we're looking at ideas and values of Puritans, how it leads to political, economic, social development of the region. So leads to, those are effects. Okay, well, let's look at a couple or a few thesis statements, and two that don't get the point and one that does. Okay, so here's a couple that will not get the point. The first one is basically just restating the prompt. The Puritans' ideas and values led to political, economic, and social development in New England in the years 1620 to 1660. You're just restating what the prompt is asking. You're not giving me an argument. You need to get into the hows and the whys. So this one's no bueno. You would get no point for the thesis. The second one, same. The Puritans held many beneficial values and ideas which ultimately caused New England to flourish between 1620 and 1660s. So maybe a little bit better is that you're saying that their values and ideas caused New England to flourish, but you're not really giving me anything specific about, well, how is it that they are flourishing? So let's look at that. No, this one will not get a point. So knock that off. And then let's look at the one that would get a point. Largely due to their belief in self-government and values of a strong work ethic, Puritan New England developed into a region promoting representation and economic viability. However, because of extreme religious beliefs, New England became the most intolerant of all colonial regions, yet the most educated. So this is a working thesis that I have. So I am explaining how their beliefs and values, so like self-government, strong work ethic, and then extreme religious beliefs. So I'm talking about what their beliefs are, and then I'm kind of saying what that leads to. So promoting representation, economic viability, and then intolerance, and then education. Okay, so I'm including what the values and ideas are, and then the effects of that. So that would be then a thesis that would get the point. So then what we need to do is to put those two things together. Okay, so putting your introductory paragraph together. You start with your contextualization, which is 3 to 4 sentences. Then after that, you kind of want to connect them together, but then you connect your thesis to the contextualization. So start with contextualization and then go into your thesis statement. So let me go ahead and read to you an introductory paragraph that contains contextualization and thesis. With the Protestant Reformation creating the Anglican Church as the established Church of England, many English Protestants, such as the Puritans, demanded further reform of the Church. Beginning in the late 16th century, in areas where many Puritans lived and made a living as small farmers, land was being closed off, causing many English Puritans to become economically distressed, with no to little means of recourse. With continued persecution, due to their outspoken nature against the church, Puritans sought out colonies in New England and will found both Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay colonies, where they sought to put their ideas and values into practice in peace. Because of this, New England region will develop with these ideas and values as the backbone of its society. Largely due to the Puritan belief in self-government and value of a strong work ethic, Puritan New England developed into a region promoting representation and economic viability. However, because of their extreme religious beliefs, New England developed into the least tolerant of all regions, yet the most educated on all of the Atlantic seaboard. So essentially what I did is I just took those paragraphs that I had, or I shouldn't say paragraphs, but one paragraph anyways. So I took my contextualization paragraph that we looked at here, and then I took my valid, point-worthy thesis that I had here, and then I put them together in one paragraph. And I kind of connected it together right in between the two. So this would be a point for contextualization and a point for thesis. So we already have 2 points out of the 6, and we really only need 1 more point to be able to get a decent score for the LEQ. Okay, so there's your introductory paragraph, which I think is very important, and a couple of easy points. So what about your body paragraphs? What is that all about? So your body paragraphs really are going to be your argument, and I should say the evidence to your argument. So body paragraphs, I always get, well, how many body paragraphs do I need? Well, I mean, that's dependent upon a couple things. So your body paragraphs, in terms of how many you have, is dependent upon what the prompt is asking. So in this particular case, it's asking you to do political, social, and economic. Most people are going to do a separate paragraph for each one. You don't have to. I mean, you can combine, if it makes sense to combine, say, political and economic, maybe, because they might be related. But it's also dependent upon what your thesis is as well. So however you're going to prove your thesis is also going to be dependent upon how many body paragraphs you're going to have. So there's no such thing as you have to write a 5-paragraph essay for this. You might have 4. I would say you would never, ever have 1 body paragraph. And please understand this as well. I won't even read your essay if you give me a giant paragraph for the entire essay. You need to organize your essay into an intro, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. So if you just give me 1 giant paragraph, it goes right back to you with a 0. So please make sure that you are organizing correctly. Think about your body paragraphs as a mini essay with a thesis, which is your topic sentence, and then evidence and analysis of evidence, which is going to help prove that argument, which is your topic sentence for that paragraph. And then also, very importantly, you want to end each body paragraph with a statement that states what you proved in the paragraph. So think of it as like a little 1 or 2 statement conclusion. Okay, so again, topic sentence, so a little mini thesis statement, which comes from your overall thesis statement, okay, which I'll get to in a minute. Then you have your evidence with analysis, and then you have your concluding sentence or sentences that kind of state what you just proved in that paragraph. All right, so when we look at the rubric for body paragraphs, we're largely going to be looking at these 2 things right here. So we're looking at, do you provide specific examples that are relevant to the topic or prompt? And then can you support your argument using those examples? So if you just have the right examples that make sense, that are relevant, you need to have 2 or more of those throughout the essay. If you're able just to do that, then you'll get a point. That is a really easy point to get. If you're able to take that evidence and then support your argument using that evidence, then that will get you the second point for that. Okay, so this is a super easy point. So if you get the contextualization, the thesis, and the examples, then you already have 3 points, which is what you need to do well on the AP test. All right, so let's break this down a little bit more. So like I said, you have 1 point for specific examples relevant to the topic, and then you have another point, which is explaining how specific examples support an argument. So for me, how I would write this essay is I would break this down into 3 body paragraphs, like I mentioned. So I would have a body paragraph on political stuff, economic stuff, and social stuff, since that's what the prompt is asking. But like I said, you can be kind of crafty, and you can maybe combine a couple of them together if it makes sense to do so. All right, politically. So politically, if I go back to my thesis, well, let's just go back to the thesis statement to review that so you can see what I'm going to be talking about in each of my body paragraphs. Because your thesis statement, as I mentioned, it's your roadmap. It tells you what each body paragraph is going to be about. It explains to the reader, this is my argument, this is where I'm going with this is what I'm going to be proving. So for this one, let's see if I can make this a little bigger. Sorry if it's going to be a little blurry. Alright, so let me show you this. So largely due to their belief in self-government and values of strong work ethic. So self-government, this is political, so this is body paragraph 1. Strong work ethic is economic, and that's, I think I have that as the third one. And that's my mistake on that, and I'll explain why in a minute. So economic for strong work ethic, and then the religious beliefs, that's going to be social. So that would be my third body paragraph. So I'm looking at the values and beliefs. So political ideas of self-government, economic idea of strong work ethic, and then social idea of extreme religious belief. So those would be my 3 body paragraphs in general. My topic sentence is going to be about, for my political body paragraph is going to be about self-government. My topic sentence for my economic paragraph is going to be about strong work ethic. And then my topic sentence for my third body paragraph is going to be about extreme religious beliefs. Now, generally, when you are constructing your body paragraphs, you want to write in the same order that you have in your thesis. And so I kind of made that mistake. It's not a huge deal, but you just in generally want to do that. So I think I actually go political. Maybe I did it. I'm not sure. Yeah, see here, I went political, economic, and so, oh, no, that's what I have here. Yes, sorry. So it is political, economic, and social. So what you wouldn't want to do, for instance, is you write it like this, and then your first body paragraph is social, your second one is economic, and your third one is political or some other combination. So you should have your argument constructed in a way that your thesis is constructed. All right, let's go back to this. And that's just too blurry, so let me just go out. All right. So my first body paragraph is going to be on the political stuff, and my topic sentence is going to be about self-government. I'm going to have specific examples to help prove how the idea of self-government is going to affect the development of New England. So I'm going to be talking about specifically town hall meetings, the Mayflower Compact, and then in order for me to get that second point, I have to do analysis. I can't just say what a town hall meeting is. I can't just say what Mayflower Compact is. I have to talk about the significance of this. Oh, this is like your vocab. Okay, so remember I said what in significance is going to be the most important. So I'm going to say what town hall meetings are. That is going to get me the specific example, but if I want that second point, I need to speak about why that's significant in the development of New England. That would be the second analysis point. My second body paragraph is going to be on the Puritan work ethic. That was a value that they had that's important to the development of the region. So some specific examples I might talk about, which I'm probably not going to talk about all of these, but I have stuff that I can pull from, like economic diversity, fishing, farming, shipbuilding. There's a merchant class, whatever, some manufacturing, lumber. So it's going to lead to, you said capitalism is something else that you could have on here, which I didn't put on here, so I'm going to add it. So capitalism. And then my analysis, again, is not just explaining what these things are, but how these things actually help develop New England. Okay, and that gets into the historical thinking skill of the effects. So these are the values and the ideas. These are examples. And then you got to talk about how the examples actually affect the development of New England overall. And then my social paragraph, My topic sentence is going to be on extreme religious beliefs. So some specific things that I might talk about might be limited church membership, limited voting, the banning of Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson, strict societal norms and consequences of those. And then again, my analysis is not just talking about what these things are, but explaining how these things affected the development of New England. Okay, so those are my body paragraphs. Okay, for my essay, I would have 3. This may look overwhelming, but I'm trying to give you an exemplar, like the best example. It's not great. I wrote this quickly, but this will kind of give you an idea specifically of what it is that you need to do. And you're going to be under a lot of pressure when you write these things because all your LEQs are in class. So don't get freaked out because I'm not expecting you to write like this in an in-class essay, although I will say some of you may have the ability to do so, and more power to you. All right, I only wrote 1 body paragraph just so you can see how this all comes together. So your topic sentence, and I'm going to be doing the body paragraph on political stuff. So think of this again as a mini thesis. My entire paragraph is going to be trying to prove what I'm saying right here. Okay, so let's take a look at it. Because of the Puritan belief in self-government, New England developed political institutions that benefited many of its inhabitants and set forth a belief that all colonists adapted regardless of religious belief. Okay, so with this, I'm basically saying that as a result of self-government, the effect of self-government is that at some point in time that through representative governments, which we'll look at examples momentarily, that all people eventually are going to benefit from this, not just the Puritans. All right, so that's my mini thesis. And now I'm going to get into proving this with specific examples and analysis. As the Mayflower was crossing the Atlantic, an important contract was signed among its passengers, known as the Mayflower Compact. That's my specific example. Both Puritans and non-Puritans formed a covenant to submit to the will of the majority while creating just laws that favored everyone. So I'm explaining what the Mayflower Compact was. Now here comes my analysis. The first step in self-government was important to the New England region. Okay, so effects. As it set into motion that while still British citizens, that due to physical lack of representation in Parliament, these colonists believed that they had the right to establish political institutions to represent themselves. This idea continues with the non-separatist Puritans. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a second. So what I'm saying with that sentence is how the Mayflower Compact actually benefited the colonists. Okay, that they're creating something to create a body of laws that represent themselves. Okay, and then I'm going to move into my next example. This idea continues with the non-separatist Puritans that helped shape and develop the Massachusetts Bay Colony. While more theocratic in nature, these Puritans did advocate self-government for many of the same reasons as the Puritans in Plymouth. However, in a more limited form. Representative government took the form of town hall meetings. So there's my specific example in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Here, all freemen and landowners that were also full church members created laws that governed the colony. And so I said what town hall meetings were, and then my analysis. While only a minority participated in this representative government, this idea took hold in the region as all towns in New England will have a town hall model. So I'm talking about how this idea spread throughout the entire region. And this idea of representative government, while still limited, it still impacted the development of the entire region. As time progresses, this form of representative government will become more inclusive. So that means it will include more people. Okay, so there are I have 2 examples Okay, my Mayflower Compact and Town Hall Meeting, which are examples of self-government, and then I'm explaining how those things impacted the development of the region. And then here's my concluding sentence, which every paragraph should have. So I'm trying to then sum up what I just proved throughout the entire paragraph. The region of New England will develop representative government institutions, giving the colonists the ability to create laws that are derived from their own beliefs and experience. This ultimately came from the Puritan belief in self-government. So those two sentences then are just kind of a summary of what I was trying to prove in all of this stuff right here. And why this is so important to the reader. I may be reading through your essay and being like, I don't understand what it is that you're trying to argue. Like, what is your point? If you sum that up in the last sentence or two sentences, that helps me as a reader immensely, because I read it, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get why you're doing this, that, and whatever up here. And if I need to, I can go back and read it with this context and be like, oh, okay, I get it. So this is like so important, and so many times, and you'll see it on your essays when I hand them back, that I'll put something here like concluding sentence or so what, or like what are you trying to sum up for me what you're trying to prove. Make it easier for the reader. If I'm only spending as an AP reader 2 or 3 minutes on your essay, you need to make it as concise as possible. Okay, so then just a few other things. Well, let me go back to body paragraphs again, actually. So that was just one body paragraph. That was my political. So my next body paragraph would be on economic. My third body paragraph would be on social. And again, I would use these things, my topic sentence, my examples, and then I explain how my examples help develop New England. All right, and then that would get me this point right here. So specific examples, and then supporting an argument. That's the how part. How do those examples, what do they say about the development of New England? So there's 2 points right there. These other 2 points are, kind of difficult to get, but that's what I'm going to end with. Okay, so the rubric. So historical reasoning, that is this point right here. Use historical reasoning to frame or structure an argument that addresses the prompt. So this is looking at how well you actually use the historical thinking skill. So for this particular essay, it's causation. So you need to be able to explain it, and causation is both cause and effect. And this one in particular is focusing on effect. So you have to be able to do a good job on talking about the effects of the Puritan values and ideas on the development of New England. If you don't address the effect part of it, you're just telling me like all this stuff, Puritan New England, they believe this, they believe that, they believe this, and they believe that. You're not going to get any points for the analysis and reasoning, because you're not explaining the effects part of it. Okay, and if it was asking you for causes of something, you got to talk about the causes. So you need to make sure that you address adequately whatever historical thinking skill they're asking you to do. And again, that's 1 point. And again, your entire essay, you can't just be in one spot. You can't just like in one sentence talk about how something was the effect of something. It has to be throughout the whole thing. So for each example that you have, you tie it to that historical thinking skill. Again, there are 3 different types of essays that you can see. This one was a causation essay. So cause and effect for that one. This one is really focused on effects. So you have to address that throughout the entire essay, and then also in your thesis as well. And then complex understanding, and most APUSH teachers I mentioned earlier call this the unicorn point, because it's like virtually impossible to get. And again, you don't get it for any one thing. If you look at the rubric, there are like a myriad of ways that the College Board is saying that you can get it, but you can't get it from just doing one of these things. So for instance, this is a causation essay, so you can explain both causes and effects throughout the entire essay. That might get you the point, because this one's really focused on effects. But this is saying that if you explain both cause and effect, then you could possibly get that point. You can look at confirming the validity of an argument. This is more for like a DBQ, looking at multiple perspectives of like different documents perhaps, or something like that. Nuances by analyzing multiple variables, that you're understanding that everything is black and white, that historical processes there's a lot of gray area, and you understand that. So you kind of, this would be like the howevers. Hey, you know, the Puritans were like this, that, and whatever, and they really sucked and had like strict society. However, so you're understanding that everything isn't just black and white. But the main thing, again, is that you have to do it throughout the entire essay. You can't just throw something in there. You can't have a paragraph that you think is going to be a complex understanding paragraph. It has to be through the whole thing. So this is more of a holistic, right, that's somewhere here, the holistic look, okay, at the entire essay. You kind of know it when you read an essay and you're like, all right, that essay's like really freaking good, like throughout the whole thing, then you know like that they're going to get the unicorn point. But it's so few far and in between. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're writing these things live. You know, you're going to spend maybe on an LEQ 20, 25 minutes or something like that. So it's very hard to get the complexity point in that short time. But like I said, don't focus on this. Like I wouldn't focus on this at all. Okay, I would just like not even worry about it, unless you're someone's like, I have to be perfect. And that's okay. It's just, I'm saying you can do so awesome on these things without even having to worry about that. What about a conclusion? Should you have one? If you have time, absolutely. If you don't have a thesis, if you didn't write one at the beginning, and you don't have a conclusion, you're not going to get, you might get 1 point on the entire rubric. Like you might have some examples or something. But you need to make sure that if you have time to write a conclusion, if you didn't write a thesis at the beginning, you need to 100% write a conclusion. So you want to, what do you do in a conclusion? You restate or tighten up your thesis. Don't change it. You have to have a matching thesis. That's important. So you can't start off with one thesis and then by the time you get to the end of the essay, you're like, yeah, actually I proved something else. That's a problem. So it doesn't even matter if you believe in what you're talking about. You just need to stick with whatever your thesis is. Don't change it. But you can tighten it up a little bit. And then just restate what it was that you proved. Very importantly, never, ever, ever, ever bring up new information, new evidence within a conclusion. That's a no-no. Your evidence is for your body paragraphs, and you develop that there. And then a couple of other things that are just minor things, but never talk about, like, never have a phrase like this in your paper. And this is why we are what we are today. I never want to see the word today in your essays. If I see that continually, I'll start taking off for it. It's poor writing. We're not talking about today. We're talking about whatever historical time period we are studying. So please make sure you don't do that. And then also a given, you should know this already, that in scholarly essays, you don't use first person. So you're never going to say, I think that the Puritans are awesome, or we believe, or you, or none of these. You're not going to use any of this kind of stuff. Okay, if you say, I think the Puritan society was strict, you just simply say the Puritan society was strict. All right, so keep the first person out of it. All right, so that, my friends, is a long-winded explanation of what the LEQ is all about. Again, if you understand the main concepts of this, once we get to the DBQ, we're just going to be throwing in documents. There's another piece to the rubric on that, dealing with the documents, but if you understand the main ideas and you do these well, then the DBQ will be like piece of cake. Okay, so that's that. Your first LEQ will be this upcoming test. And if you have any questions about anything, you need further clarification, then you need to come in and talk to me so we can get this all sorted out, because I want you guys to be writing good essays. Okay? So thank you for your time and your patience and listening, all of that, and have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, whatever. All right, that's it.